Hello.
Hi, Kindra. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. How's the
What are you up
craziness
to?
going today?
Oh, she's crazy.
You or just everything in general?
um, Me, primarily. Yeah.
Oh, come on.
I create it. No, not entirely true. I
You
keep,
facilitate it.
yeah, I keep signing myself up for things like this that create it. And then I'm like, I'm so busy. How did this happen? I'm like, oh, I keep saying yes to everything.
Well, you keep saying yes, and then you sillily try to get a life somewhere in between and go and visit family and all that kind of crap too. So, God forbid, should you have a balanced life.
How dare I? I know. Um, so have you checked the amount of registrants for this today?
Yeah, it was over 50. I checked this morning, so
Sweet.
we should
I
have
had
this.
to go ahead.
This is going to be great because we have a good crew on. I was like,
Good.
this is a fair bit more than we usually get. So I blame that on you.
Well, I'll take it.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I doled out the freebie quite a bit, but a lot of people are like, "Oh, lunch. I have a meeting. I'm busy. It's budget." Blah, blah, blah. So we'll see.
Well, this is the thing is, and I'm sure you guys are the same. As we go through kind of this more and more and everything, and it's not just PMI. I find this is with other groups too. It's like, okay, how do you keep member engagement? How do you, how
Yeah.
do you get people to still want to come to these lunch and learns? At the start, everybody was like, yeah, let's jump in. This is awesome. I want to do a lunch
Yeah.
where, I'll eat my sandwich and kind of listen. And now it's just like, man, I just want to get away from my computer.
Totally. We've while it's kind of taboo, we've been doing events. So we've been doing it was easier in the summer. But we did I think 3 golf events for our consultants and clients. We're doing a corn maze thing this Friday with
Oh,
our
I
internal team.
love the corn maze.
I've never been, so I'm excited. And it's licensed now at Calgary Farmyard. Mm-hmm.
Are you going to bring the kids for that one too?
No.
Do you want to think about that for a second?
No, I've already decided. And because I helped organize it, I was like, let's not bring the kids because my conversations are 90 seconds max whenever I have my kids.
Yes.
Because I'm chasing after them and where's this one? Where's that one? You have to go to the bathroom, you're hungry, you need a snack. It's just never ending. So I'm like,
Okay,
let's make this an adults thing.
You got to make sure to bring the kids later on for this one then too, because it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I did bring them not to the corn maze, but just to the Calgary Farmyard one year, and they had an absolute blast. Yeah.
Good.
They loved it. So
yeah, it's funny. We got our last cat from the corn maze a couple of years ago. Yeah, I know. It's a weird story. We went down and Candida knows my wife, and she's very persuasive, shall we say. And okay. So we went down and it was like we were looking in one of these barns, and it was kind of fall. It was getting cold and everything like that. And they had all these kittens and everything. And she said, "What do you do with these kittens?" And she said, "Well, we just kind of let them here and everything like that." And she says, "Well, can I take one home?" And they said, "Well, no, we don't usually do that." And 20 minutes later, we had a cat that we were taking home. So,
do you have cats?
We have 2. Yeah, we had one before, so now we have 2, and we also have 2 dogs. But yeah, anyway, so the good thing for me, it was coming up to her birthday, and she said, "I won't ask for anything for my birthday if you let me have this cat." And I said, "Deal." So
done. But now you're signing yourself up for 10 to 20 years of commitment.
Yeah,
for a free birthday.
I'm not a good long-term thinker with stuff like that. So at the time it sounded like a really good idea. It got me out of okay, what do I need to think of and everything. And every time it was brought up, it's like, hey, you got your birthday present already. So anyways.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I won't say it backfired on me. I love her and everything, but yeah, she's the corn maze cat.
There you go. That's awesome. Hi, Candida. I don't know if we've met.
I think we had yeah, in one of the face-to-face, the old world of face-to-face. Yeah.
I feel like you guys would have met at the PDC because Kindra
Yeah.
was a presenter at
Yeah, that's very possible.
Yeah,
a few years
that's
ago.
where I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
Yeah.
like out to here pregnant at that one. So
yeah,
a little different, but yeah, I met a lot of people there. That was fun. Those events, I miss those. I'm sure you guys
Yeah.
do too.
Oh my God, yeah.
Mhm.
yeah.
Are
see
you
the
guys doing an in-person one at all this year, or is it all virtual?
virtual.
Okay.
I have a feeling it's going to be like that at least until the end of the year. I don't think we'll be able to do any
Yeah.
events until
Yeah.
sometime next year. So we'll see.
Yeah.
It is. We're all at home with our stuff and cats and people and everything. So there you go.
Yeah.
Kids.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know you navigate that all the time, don't you, Kindra?
Oh yeah. Well, that's why this door has a lock on it.
You have a lock on your door. Smart.
Yeah. Stay out.
Do you have like one of those signs on it and everything like that that kind of says, okay, you know,
No, I mean, like open or close, like when they wouldn't care. Like they just know that it's pretty much always locked, and they're like, they can reef on the handle as much as they want.
you just have to put a sign up for Sean maybe and just kind of let him know, do not come in.
Like in session, or yeah, I know. Yeah.
I think everybody has some sort of version of something like that. I don't think it's, I mean, everyone's so used to kind of having, you know, people kind of walk in the backgrounds making sandwiches, and because where everybody sits, I think is just,
Yeah.
you know, it just depends, right? So, you know, you
Yeah.
have in your kitchen or whatever it may be and everything. So
Yeah.
it's, yeah, whatever.
We're lucky, like we've got 2 guest bedrooms in our basement. So he and I both have like separate office space with doors. And you can kind of like hear each other through the walls. So he's usually like, oh, there she is. She's talking. Okay, she's in a meeting. I won't barge in and, you know, ask her this or that or whatever.
I don't know. My wife and I text. I kicked my wife out of her office today. Because when I do these, it's kind of like, yeah, so
Right.
This is her real office behind us. I like the fish,
Oh,
which is
I
kinda,
like the fish too. It's very calming.
it is, and I think that's why she put it in there originally. But yeah, it's kind of nice, and it's like you can't really see it, but I guess if you're in a call like this, maybe it exudes calmness for other people, which might be good.
Mhm.
I don't know. So
Sean comes in here whenever he has like a big meeting, which I'm like, if you just didn't turn your office into a boy dungeon, you would have light and it would be nice and airy in the background too.
what does a boy dungeon look like? I'm curious now.
Well, so this room has like a queen size bed. We originally created it because like my brothers and nieces and nephews would come visit us back in olden days. And so the other room has bunk beds in it for the kids. So it looks kind of funny because he's got like bunk beds behind him. So it looks like you're in like a child's room. But then he doesn't like the natural light. So he like draws all the blinds and just has like a lamp going. So it's just like light coming from one location. And I'm like, you could just open but boy stuff. You know?
Boy stuff. I like how you
Yeah.
just threw that out there, boy stuff.
Yeah.
It's funny. We got a couple minutes so I can tell the story real quick. we get on these team calls, and one guy is an agile coach and one thing the company works at and everything, and he has his like background kind of like shaded and everything like that, and he always had these really funny colors. And sorry, I'm just telling a story, everybody, as people start to come on now. And so he had all these really kind of fun colors in the background and everything. And so I said to him, Lucas, I said, do me a favor. And I said, what is on your walls? And he said, I really don't like to share that very often, Kevin. And I said, well, what is it? And he took his like shading off and everything. And I guess he was in he's been working at one of his kids' bedrooms. And so all on the wall is like pictures of like painted on turtles and Nemo and all this kind of stuff. And he said, I have a hard time kind of just, you know, getting people to take me seriously if I have this outside and everything. So
yeah,
we'll kind of see. All right, everybody, we're just kind of coming up to 12 o'clock. We're just chatting here with Kindra and of course Candida. We'll give everybody a minute or two, because I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. We're just coming up to 12 o'clock. So come on in, jump on in our conversation. We're talking about corn mazes and kids and all kinds of fun stuff. So
work from home and
Yeah.
Work from home, like everybody seems to be always talking about, I think, at this
Yeah.
for the last, what, 18, 19 months? Is that how long we've been dealing with this crap? So,
Yeah.
Wow.
yes.
Too
Yeah.
long.
But we
Yeah,
are going to have a nice full room, so it's nice to see everybody kind of joining in. Hi, Kirk, how are ya? John, how's it going? Thanks for coming. So it's kind of good to see everybody today. So it's nice. It's nice to see everybody's kind of dressing up in sweaters, and it's kind of that fall. We did actually get a fall this year, it seems like, for a few weeks, which was kind of nice. So I'm thankful for that, right? Yep. And then Candida, I know you're working from home, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah. We're still there, so it's all good.
And you're going to be, I guess, from the city perspective, you're going to be home for a little while, aren't you?
That's right. Yeah, I think till the end of the year for sure. And then we'll definitely see how things go for 2022.
You're with the city of Calgary, Candida?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got a couple of consultants there as well, and everyone's just, plugging away from home.
Yeah.
Well, and we always talk about this. I mean, how things look when we get back into it, whether it be some form of hybrid or, it's just, I think everybody's still trying to figure all that stuff out, right? I don't think there's, organizations are kind of, seems to be very fluid. So I think that, people are kind of going, okay, what are we going to try next week? So we'll have to see how things kind of shake out, right? And then I know for sure, Kindra, you're dealing with a lot of the same things. It's like, okay, your consultants, where are they going to be? What's going to be happening?
Yeah, and every client's different, and some are, like pretty gung-ho about getting back into the office, and just like, we've got our QR scanner, just make sure you've got your information up to date, and you'll be asked whenever you enter the building, no guests, kind of thing, which is possible, I think. And then others are just like, no, we're working from home until further notice. We'll check in January 2022, kind of thing. So it really just depends. So it's kind of a mixed bag. We just have to be prepared for every and any scenario, and make sure that we're protecting ourselves, protecting our consultants, and protecting our clients. So.
And to your point, Kindra, it's the same. It's like everybody's home situation is very diversified. So there is people that are like, you got young kids at home. It's like, man, I do kind of want to get back to the office, when it's safe and okay. But there's a lot of people like, hey man, I'm super productive at home, and there's lots of conversations that are kind of coming around with all that, isn't there?
Yeah.
So, okay. Oh, I see Melissa's joining us. Hi, Melissa. How are you? Haven't seen you in a while either. So it's nice to have a bunch of folks.
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Oh, hey, girl. I haven't seen you for a while either. I can't see you at
know.
all right now.
I was going to figure you two would know each other for sure. So
You bet.
Oh yeah, we worked together before.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so we're just after 12 o'clock. So I would like to kind of keep cognizant and everything for people's time. And when everybody joins in, we'll just kind of get them a little bit caught up. So first off, I would just like to pass everything over to our president, Candida, just for a couple of opening remarks. So off to you, Candida.
Thank you very much. And I'm kind of trying to get myself situated because there's the sun coming in at this time now. So it's not the halo, it's the sun. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I know some of you had attended at another time, and we apologize for that. So I want to say that right off the bat. It's definitely, sort of that world that we're living in. So if you did attend last time and no one was there, we apologize again. And thank you for having patience with us and coming in today. So I also want to take this opportunity to welcome you all, and also to thank the board members, the volunteers, our sponsors. We really do depend on all of us and everyone to make these happen. Kevin, thank you so much for your dedication and commitment to putting these events on. I know that we've got our community of practice that are always going, what's up next? What's up next? So thank you, everyone, and especially our sponsors. They've been really super loyal to us, and especially in these trying times of, I think this is such an amazing topic that we're going to get to shortly on really that value base, right? Like, what's the value that we can deliver? What is the cost of not doing things right? So, we really do want to thank everybody, and especially, again, our sponsors that really support us during these times. So, want to really thank Kindra. She's a friend of PMI Southern Alberta chapter. She's been with us in so many different capacities. I know that she spoke a few years ago at the PDC. We were just talking about she was with child then. So, fast forward, she's got her little ones running around. So thank you so much for, presenting for us this really valuable topic that we really want to, make sure that we get some really good tips on how do we move forward in this new world in providing that value. What is benefits, realization, and how can we capture that? Because at the end of the day, it's really delivering that customer satisfaction.
So true. Thanks so much for that, Candida. Again, your time is very valuable. I just want to echo a few things that Candida mentioned too. Thank you very, very much for joining us and continuing to support PMI-SAC. These lunch and learns for me are a lot of fun. And for me personally, I've been looking forward to this one for quite a while, because I get to listen to one of my favorite speakers and favorite people, which is Kindra. And Kindra Howard's going to be doing a presentation for us today on benefits realization. Kindra's a partner at Tricon Solutions. She's a certified management consultant, PMP, business relationship management professional. She's a Scrum Master. She's got a Bachelor of Commerce degree, the major in entrepreneurial management. She's got lots going on. So we are very, very thankful and appreciative to have her today with us. I just want to make note, please be cognizant if you do have questions. We're going to save some time, as we typically like to do at the end, for Q&A. So just populate everything into the chat box. And I think Kindra said she was allowing a little bit of time at the end to kind of jump on all those too. So again, thanks for joining us. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Kindra.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be, part of PMI-SAC once again. It has been a while. As Candida mentioned and Kevin mentioned, I was 6 months pregnant when I presented at PDC. So this is a much more comfortable presentation. I get to do it from my home office. So that's a nice change. So I'm going to get started here, sharing my screen. Make sure we're good to go here. Awesome. And I'm in sharing mode. So all I can see, Kevin, is you and your fish tank. So it's very calming and yeah, very therapeutic. So welcome everyone. Thank you again for your time today. I am anticipating this will probably be about a 25, 30-minute presentation. So hopefully we'll be able to get you guys out a little bit early. But I am saving quite a bit of time afterward for some Q&A. So as Kevin mentioned, feel free to pop those in the chat and I will get to them after the presentation. So before we get started, I thought, and just a thumbs up, Kevin, if you can hear and see the presentation, okay? Okay, good. Thank you. So before we get started, I thought I'd introduce myself and explain a little bit about how and why I'm here today. My name is Kindra Howard, and I hold a bunch of designations and letters after my name. I'm a partner with Tricon Solutions, who are a professional services firm that specialize in project delivery, primarily but not limited to the technology space. We are a Calgary-based firm and have worked with organizations in the private and public sectors all across Western Canada. Personally, I have been practicing project management for over 13 years in a wide variety of industries, from post-secondary to oil and gas to legal, government. But how I got to be here today is probably like many of you. I put my hand up to volunteer with PMI, and I was selected to participate in the authoring of their very first benefits realization management practice guide, which is a bit of a mouthful. The BRM practice guide was developed by myself plus a 6-person team of international experts. And to produce the practice guide, we met with academics studying the topic across the world. Some of you may have heard of Dr. Breeze and his team in the UK, met with him several times. We also met several specialists in other project management disciplines, such as like Prince2, various agile frameworks. We reviewed the practice guide with the standards member advisory group. And finally, we reviewed and consulted with all internal PMI publications that mention BRM. So I had to read every single publication that PMI ever put out that mentioned benefits realization in order to make sure that this collective practice guide really incorporated all of the concepts and components from all of those documents. So we were really trying to make a source of truth with our practice guide. So this was really, for me, my first real research project. So from that perspective, it was really fascinating. The product of work is available for free download to members on the PMI.org website. If you just search for benefits realization, it should come up. It's something that I'm really proud to have been part of, but I'm also aware that, like the first version of the PMBOK, this was the first dedicated publication of this kind. So I'm sure there will be many more iterations to come, specifically with the version 7 of the PMBOK and their new direction, and how that might affect other standards like the PGM-BOK and the PFM-BOK. But it was the first step in this direction. So I'm really happy and proud to have been part of it. And then in general, I wouldn't be here today if I didn't really love what I do for a living, and be really passionate about project management, which I definitely am. So today, what we're going to talk about is a wide variety of benefits concepts, how to apply them, and so forth. So while my work in the space was loosely based on a couple years of experience as a business relationship manager, which is super confusing when you say you're a BRM doing BRM and you have BRMs, it's a lot of acronyms. Over the past few years, it's become a passion topic that I'm truly fascinated by, and one that I've had the privilege of taking from theory to practice in my day-to-day consulting work with my firm. So today I'm here to explain how to do just that. Just take that theory and apply it in real world situations. So to do so, I'm going to break down what is benefits realization, why organizations need to do it, and why we need to do a better job of it, the cost to not doing it, how to connect benefits to portfolios, programs, and projects, and some tips and tricks on how to get started. So as I mentioned before, I'd love to take any questions you might have at the end of the presentation. Feel free to add them in at in the chat during the presentation, and I'll get to as many as I can at the end. So let's get started. What is benefits realization? So whenever I say the term benefits realization, I almost immediately get a room of eye-rolling people that are just like, oh my God, benefits realization, come on, are you kidding me? Which is fair, because it kind of does sound like one of those really over-architected consulting terms. But I want to break down the definition, mostly because it's something that my team and I labored over for months, and I'm not even kidding you, months. And we spent quite a bit of time decomposing. So what we saw a lot in the academic literature was that the terms benefits and value were often being used interchangeably or as synonyms, which was causing a lot of confusion. So when we developed our definitions for benefits and value, we wanted to differentiate how they were different from one another. And this was also some of the guidance that we received from Dr. Priest. So throughout the practice guide, you'll see the terms outputs and outcomes littered throughout as we discuss benefits. And that's because when we talk about benefits, we're talking about the individual outputs from a project, which collectively become outcomes on programs and portfolios. I'll explain this in a picture later, but it's important to kind of set the foundation for this presentation. So I just wanted to make sure that I highlighted that. But when we talk value here in this context, we're actually talking about an equation. So value is the benefits, all the good stuff that you've accomplished in your project, program, portfolio, less the cost to achieving them. And that value might be tangible or intangible. And hopefully that value at the end of the day is a positive number. So what you put in is less than what you're gonna get out at the end of the day. So when we're talking about benefits realization management, it's setting up the organizational framework to always be tracking and measuring benefits in order to ensure that you're reaping the rewards from your mission, from your initiatives. So now that I've explained kind of the theory behind it, let me explain why an organization should do it. And the simple answer is that projects are the vehicle to deliver strategy. We all know that projects are a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique service or product or result. But where I used to get lost for many years in my career on my projects was the why. And oftentimes when you read through all the PMI literature, we're talking about how to deliver projects, how to get from point A to point B, how to decompose scope, how to turn those activities into a schedule. But we kind of assume that there's a why tied to it, that whoever is giving us the project or telling us we need to run this project, program, or portfolio has a really solid business case for doing so. So why are we doing X project? And how will it help deliver benefits and ultimately value to the organization? And that's where BRM comes in. Benefits realization can help directly explain how your project, program, or portfolio, whatever it may be, is helping the organization deliver its strategy. And if you can't clearly articulate how your project, program, or portfolio directly relates to delivering to your organization's strategy, then you really need to be asking yourself or your sponsor or your customers, why are you doing that project? Is it someone's pet project that they've just always wanted to do and now they've got some budget or authority to do so? Or is this really going to help move the needle for the organization? So the benefits of capturing benefits, so you were like, well, we're on Zoom, but this is like teams and teams. We need a team and a team territory where we're explaining overlapping terms. So the benefits of capturing benefits are that you make better decisions when it comes to selecting your initiatives, and you're more able to integrate or align your initiatives into programs and portfolios, ultimately resulting in a better product at the end of the day. So what does it cost our economy when we can't deliver projects because they don't make sense or we weren't cognizant of their value from the very beginning? And I will show you. So as many of you know, PMI invests a lot of energy and money into developing deep market intelligence in order to produce their Pulse of the Profession report every year. The past 2 years have highlighted BRM as a key area in the industry that require maturation, which is why they ended up ultimately pulling this volunteer team together to create the Benefits Realization Management Practice Guide. So here's a few of their stats. 9.9% of every dollar is wasted due to poor project performance, which is 99 million for every 1 billion invested. When you scale that from a global perspective, 1 million is wasted every 2 seconds. So projects on average waste 10%, give or take, due to poor performance. So if you think of the times you had to redo something because you weren't clear the first time, which added time or cost, or when you realize you don't need to do a project halfway through it and you decide to cancel it, so you end up sinking what you spent to date on it. This is all contributing factors to that waste. So when you scale these numbers to the global level, it equates to an enormous amount of waste. But the fact is, we need projects to progress companies, keep up with competition, innovate, et cetera, et cetera. So projects aren't going away, but it also appears that if we don't do something about it, neither will the waste. So in this context, when we're talking about waste, we're talking about not having that clear line of sight from strategy to delivery. Some common pitfalls that I've seen, or reasons why benefits get discussed or never followed through on within some of the organizations I've worked with, are because they fail to bridge that gap between strategy and execution. Executives don't recognize that strategy is delivered through projects, and/or companies are seeking that turnkey solution to quantify business value, but don't realize it's extremely difficult to measure if you aren't benchmarking your initiatives up front, along the way, and then ideally after your initiative has concluded. So sadly, though I know a lot of organizations would really like that silver bullet or magic pill to solve the benefits realization problem, it's a definite journey for most places that requires maturation over months and years. So I'll explain what that means and why it's important in a second. So how do we bring this all together? I find this diagram to be extremely helpful when bringing all these concepts together. From here, you can see truly how strategy, or the what, should flow to initiatives to achieve it. I'm sure all of you have been in environments where you start here and then start pumping out deliverables and get things done. And then you're like, oh, put these together and we've got some value. And then maybe halfway through, you get questioned about the value of the projects or the program you're supposed to be doing, but you didn't set it up properly, maybe at the beginning. So you're doing a business case once you're like halfway through execution to talk about the objectives and how it aligns to strategy, and so on and so on. And really all that creates is misalignment and waste. So now I want to just bring it back to that outputs and outcomes concept. So let's define outputs as the stuff we produce, be it physical or virtual, for a specific type of customer. So let's, in this example, say car seats for babies. And let's define the outcomes as the difference our stuff makes. So keeping your child safe in your car. Borrowing another example from Harvard Business Review, a highway construction company's outputs are, so here a project might be the project design or the engineering, or a number of highway miles built and repaired. But the outcomes are the difference made by the outputs. So that's better traffic flow, shorter travel times, fewer accidents. That's the collective outcomes of all the projects that went into creating this larger benefit or value. So outcomes are the benefit your customers receive from your stuff. Outputs are important products, services, maybe profits, revenues. Those are the deliverable. Outcomes create meaning. They create relationships, differences, and the combined results of multiple outputs. And once we finally deliver the outcomes, then we start to see benefits. And of course, benefits less the cost result in value. Now, the reason why this is a circle is because it's not to say that you create your strategy once and it never gets updated. On the flip side, we also don't want to be updating our strategy every week or month, but it is important to have those checks semi-annually, annually on are our initiatives and outputs, outcomes, benefits, value still aligned with where this organization is going, which has been extremely relevant and important in sort of the COVID world, where things are constantly changing and organizations are having to pivot, go from one area to another, and maybe some of the projects that were underway at one point are no longer as important as, say, setting up Zoom or Teams so that you can work from home. So it requires a shift in initiatives to align with the new strategy. This diagram also explains the important relationships between programs and portfolios versus projects toward delivering benefits and value. Sorry, one sec. In our research, we also came to find that many organizations tried to get to the really granular details of every output of every project, rather than aligning and focusing those projects into collective programs and portfolios, which are really the ones delivering outcomes. So the organizations who saw better benefits and had better benefits realization management, and therefore value, were the ones grouping their initiatives into strategic objectives linked to programs and portfolios, rather than a bunch of disjointed or disconnected projects. So again, this is just another justification of why strategy needs to be the driving force behind projects. Now, as I mentioned before, BRM isn't an implement and done, sadly, turnkey solution. It involves a variety of facets within your organization working harmoniously together to produce governance and data from which you can collect metrics. Think of it this way: if you don't state upfront what output your project is intended to deliver in your project charter and collectively track those outputs in your program and portfolio, how the heck are you supposed to quantify them at the end? And that's why, to do BRM, you must have a basic level of organizational maturity of where you are in each of these areas before you BRM. My recommendation is to start small, then incrementally make improvements in your processes in order to be able to better track and measure your organization's benefits. So these concepts apply to any kind of project, whether it's technology, construction, environmental, whatever. So for each area, think about where your organization or maybe your client's organization is at. Do you have that common set of practices on how you deliver projects? Do you have a governing body, such as a PMO, that helps guide your project teams in a consistent manner? Are you selecting the right projects, programs, and portfolios and ensuring that they all align with the organization's strategy? In delivering your projects, do you have a consistent way of tracking costs, productivity, or efficiency? That's really that controls piece. And finally, are all of these concepts and terms being used in the same way across the entire organization? To be honest, if this looks like a lot, it's because it is a lot. And this is herein why it's not a turnkey situation. But as I said before, if you start small, it's entirely possible. And of course, as project management practitioners, we make the impossible possible. So this is definitely achievable. So how do we do that? So I'll share a few examples of some really quick and easy ways of how you can get started with BRM. Benefits register. So this is a sample benefits register I built on from the benefits realization management practice guide and developed for a client. It can also be downloaded from our tricon.ca website if you want the full version of it. But using this, we were able to determine metrics to quantify or qualify each benefit and disbenefit, come up with common themes, and determine that true value of the program. Now, because most organizations don't formally do BRM, this was extremely challenging to measure the intangible benefits and disbenefits, but we were able to visually represent how we help move the needle on their strategy by showing how the programs, projects, and outputs to outcomes to benefits and alignment to strategy mapped all together. And I'll show you what that looks like on a next slide. Ideally, an organization would have, this is sort of PMI ideal as well. An organization would have their organizational benefits strategy, which would include something like an enterprise version of this, along with standards, definitions, metrics. But without that, you can easily start by using a tool like this. And really my mantra when it comes to benefits realization is just start by starting. Use a tool, start tracking it, and you'll be fascinated by the information that starts to present itself over time. In this particular example, when we kicked off the program here, we had our understanding of our goal, we had our objectives, which were the projects. Those projects had key benefits, the outputs, and then collectively we had a variety of benefits that we wanted to get. I think we captured like 10 pretty big benefits. We wanted to reduce costs, increase revenue, all those good things. When we completed the program, like a year and a half later, we had captured 126 benefits throughout the entire life cycle of the program. So while we set out to achieve, and I should also say about 40 disbenefits, which I'll get to in a second. So while we set out to achieve, this goal and move the needle for this organization, we not only did that, in capturing this information in this way, we were able to also showcase that, hey, as a result of, centralizing this system, we were able to, and we didn't even think about this when we spun up the project, decommission 7 other systems, saving the organization this much in licensing fees. We've now got all these groups who had never really collaborated or worked together, working together. So now they're looking at each other's lines of business to figure out like how can they align them, how can they start charging the same fees, because some were charging lower prices and some were charging extremely high prices, and people were paying the high prices. So there was a lot of synchronization and potential because we were able to articulate it factually using a really simple register. And this is a spreadsheet. So register, but it's a spreadsheet. So it's a simple tool to just start by starting. And if you think of it similar to just like a requirements register, this is similar to that requirements traceability exercise that you would do. Mapping back, like, did we meet this objective? Did we meet this requirement? Here, you're just talking about benefits instead of requirements. One question I often get is when you're looking at a register like this and you see this dreaded term metrics. There we go. Is that how do you calculate or quantify metrics for something like productivity or efficiency, which is something, it's a term that we throw around often, especially in our like charters or business cases. It's going to improve productivity and increase efficiency, and everyone's going to be so much happier as a result of it. Well, how do you calculate that? And the short answer is you make it up. Not as in like you pull it out of thin air, but you create metrics that are consistent across the board, and you make them understandable to every area within your organization. And that really is the most important thing, is that they're the same. So you are capturing, tracking, and measuring all of your programs, projects, and portfolios with the same measuring stick, or so at least all your measurements are consistent. So creating a benefits glossary or theme is another easy way to start tracking benefits and start tracking them against multiple programs or portfolios to start seeing, oh my gosh, this picture is really starting to come together. This next diagram is called the benefits map, and you'll start to see some trends here that, this data wouldn't be possible to present in this way if you didn't capture it in this way, and if you don't have these maturity models in place. So it all really feeds in to one another. So this diagram is called the benefits map or logical framework. At the bottom, you can see that there's a legend that explains what each of the colors mean. And then throughout, you can start to see how each of the outputs collectively becomes benefits. So this sample was pulled for a city who was trying to justify to its citizens why it should host the Olympics. Obviously, this wasn't done for Calgary, or else it would have been approved. But if you use a diagram like this, it can be very helpful to show a visual representation of how each project within the program can align to delivering outputs, the thing, which can then deliver outcomes, that collective difference made by the outputs, and then what end benefits those delivered and how they aligned to strategic goals and objectives. So new sports park resulted in increased attraction to tourism, which increased more day visitors, more residential tourists, ultimately leading to an improved image for the city. And conversely, regenerated urban park or athletes village, like all of these projects collectively turned into these end benefits and then delivered to strategic objectives. So when you start to think about your projects like, well, I don't think this is going to help deliver to your strategic objective, start to think about, well, maybe are there other projects in the periphery that could be collectively combined to start telling that story? And if not, how can you tell that story from your one project to say, okay, well, I'm going to do this, but then there's going to be a phase 2 or a phase 3. And then we're going to slowly move the needle towards creating more jobs, increasing revenue, what have you. A map like this really explains how you can get from a project and outputs to those benefits, to those strategic objectives. Lastly, this is a model that we use at Tricon when we're doing a benefits maturity assessment with a client. As I've mentioned throughout this presentation, where there is no strategy, really there should be no projects, which is why you see business strategy at the bottom of this pyramid. And you'll notice here you've got business strategy, objective alignment, initiative alignment, benefit processes, benefit culture. And this is all very aligned back to this model here. So without this, you really can't be too mature in this facet, which won't enable you to collect this information, and so on and so forth. So when you're thinking, sorry, lost my train of thought there. If you have a solid strategy, the next set of questions asks how well do your objectives align to it, and how aligned are your initiatives to it. And these are really foundational to doing benefits realization. Once you have those components in place, what processes do you have to capture, measure, and report on those benefits? And finally, once you have all of those, do you have a culture of benefits realization? Is everyone working towards the same goal? Do they understand where the organization's going and what it's going to take to get there? Are we all rowing the boat in the same direction? So this is really a way to help start conceptualizing, where am I at from a maturity perspective, and where does it make sense to start? So getting started, where should you start? In conclusion, here's a few tips to get you started, because while it might seem really overwhelming, starting your benefits realization journey is really going to be much easier than you think, so long as you're committed to the value of doing so. So with that, what I will leave you with are a few tips on how to get started. So start by starting, but also envision what you hope to get out of benefits realization. Think about all the fancy Power BI dashboards and business intelligence that you can derive once you truly get everything working in harmony together. You get all that information centralized, and you're able to start telling that story a lot better. Next, understand what you're capable of doing, and don't try to do everything all at once. Iteration really is the key to success with BRM. Next, understand that laissez-faire is not a recipe for successity when it comes to benefits. And you need a culture of driving success, which should not only come from, your own empowered teams, but also your leadership group. And they need to be bought into the concept if they haven't already tried to start it. And before time and energy and quality investments will be made to ensuring benefits realization. So that's it. Thank you for your time today, everyone. I hope you found this was a pretty quick session. I tried to just scrape the surface on this concept. There's definitely a lot to be said about it. I hope you found this session informative, fun, and I hope I've left you a few ways that you feel empowered to get started on your benefits realization journey. Here's a multitude of ways to get a hold of me. You can email me, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. And as I promised, I'll be taking a few questions over the next 10, 15 minutes, depending on how many we have here. So we can get into those.
Thank you so much, Kindra. That was awesome. I'll get to our first question in the chat. It's from Tim. And Tim was asking, it was kind of partway through, he said, have you explored the link between benefits realization and modern asset management approaches?
I need to read that. The benefits and modern asset management approaches, ISO 55000. Not asset management or like any of the ISO standards per se. There was a guy who was like an ISO certified person on our team. But there's definitely some correlation between asset management and benefits realization. So again, like I work mostly in the technology space. So when I think of asset management, I think of like total cost of ownership. And how much are your investments costing you, and what is it costing to maintain them or support them, or what are the projects that you need in order to keep them relevant or up to date, which is a really common discussion point now, as all of us are working from home and so many organizations are moving to the cloud. It's what is that total cost of ownership, which is your cost of assets. So I can't speak specifically to ISO 55000, but yes, they are very tied together, because you are in fact trying to correlate, the benefits to the value of your investments to your assets.
Tim, did that kind of touch on what you were looking for?
Yep, that's pretty much it. Like, it's asset management approach is really around value generation and this is understanding the benefits and the value that you're going to get from your project. So yeah, there just seems to be a lot of correlation in these two fields, especially portfolio management, the same sort of thing.
Yeah,
they're basically doing the same thing, but kind of in two different spaces.
Yeah, and that was interesting. Like when we were putting our practice guide together, we really realized a lot of discrepancies between what the PMBOK was saying, what the PGMBOK was saying, and the portfolio MBOK was saying. So we tried to correlate that all together to say, okay, where do you get the most bang for your buck? And that's really portfolio and program management. A little bit on project, not to say like projects don't deliver value, but it's at that portfolio and program management level. And those are your longer term strategic initiatives, which are, have a greater ticket price, and then hopefully a greater benefit and value to the organization as well.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Stuart, you had your hand up. You want to come off a mute and just ask Kindra what you were looking for?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. Hi, Kindra. Good to see you. I agree 100% with you that the strategy is the critical piece, and if you don't have a strategy, you've got nothing to deliver a project against. But I wonder, I think there's a fundamental disconnect between business benefit realization and project management and I don't think your templates recognize it, which is that the benefits are frequently delivered as a stream over time, not as point benefits within the time extent of the project. And consequently, I would contend that there's a disconnect there between benefits realization and project management. And project managers are fundamentally the wrong people to be dealing with benefits realization, because we as project managers are doing these temporary initiatives. We're interested in the goal of delivering the deliverable of the project at the end of that on a timescale. The fact that there may be benefits that are delivered 6 months later, I need somebody in the organization to track that, because it isn't going to be me as a project manager, because I'm off doing something else.
Totally.
And I'm not sure that you didn't talk about timeline benefit stream realization.
No, I didn't. I didn't call it out specifically, but if you think back to the benefits register, there was a column there for benefit owner. And we do call it out in the practice guide that absolutely, in more instances than not, organizations haven't realized the full benefits of the project until long after the project team, program team, whatever is gone. So there is, I didn't talk about it today, but it is in the practice guide as to how you would transition, and it is like probably one of the most important things, not just like standing it up and identifying at the beginning of the project. It's at that closure state. Who do you transition those benefits to? Who's your beneficiary that's going to be responsible for seeing those benefits through and continuing to calculate them long after the project's done? And that's a common pitfall, and that's something where most organizations kind of fall down, is that transition to sustainment or transition to beneficiary. But yeah, you're right, it is verging into like, is that the PM's job? Or should that be like, if you have a BRM practice, like a business relationship management practice, should that not be transitioned to them? And in some organizations I've worked at, that's the case. You transition them to like the business partner or the BRM. Some organizations transition them to like a line manager or an operational manager. But you're right, there does need to be that full life cycle long beyond when the project team sort of dissipates.
Yeah, thank you. I think the same applies to change management as well. And in that's that sort of a longer term piece that really sits outside and over and above projects. But let's not go down that rabbit hole right now. Thanks, Kindra.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good question.
All right, we're gonna get to Mr. Miller. Sorry, I don't know your first name, and then we'll get to Kirk's question on the chat.
Miller.
No worries, it's Sean Miller.
Oh, hey.
So, hey, how are you?
Good.
Good presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
So actually, so I work with Pembina's, we'll call it a IS project management office, and we're starting benefits management. There's a few points I want to make just so I throw it out there. So I've been told teams have tried to do this before, and then it goes up to leadership. Like it's more of a political thing where we're measuring the benefits, and then nobody wants to report them, because at the senior level, if you report them and you don't hit those benefits, you're not getting your bonuses. So they're, you know what I mean? So like it's a very political thing. So we're kind of treading on eggshells trying to get this thing started, because when you say your benefits are this, the sponsor signs off on it, then you come back a year after the project's over and you realize, oh, well, we didn't realize the benefits we thought we would.
Yeah.
Well, then they don't get their bonuses, they look bad, they whatever, right? So it actually got to that point where it went to a level of leadership where they didn't want to report this anymore.
Mhm.
So it kind of went away.
Yeah.
The second thing we keep,
So your leadership team wasn't advocating for it because they didn't want to see the information. But
more or less, yeah.
how, if they weren't tracking benefits, how were
Yeah.
they tracking their performance then, which would lead to their bonuses?
Their performance, so it'd just be their operational goals. Like it wasn't, I don't think a lot of it's actually, because the sponsors are usually the VPs, right, or whatever, and so they have obviously an operations portion,
Yeah.
and then they're sponsors for projects, but I'm not sure a lot of their goals actually include anything project related. So I again, I don't know, but
Yeah.
that's definitely a pitfall.
It requires a pretty forward-thinking executive team, to be honest, who have to be open and ready to embrace that transparency.
Yeah.
I mean, if they don't like what they see, then maybe there's a case for change on how projects are getting delivered, or maybe it goes back. And a really interesting thing that BRM will do is gut check your strategy and say, like, are you guys headed in the wrong way? If your metrics really suck and everything's looking pretty gloomy, then and you realize, like, well, it's not the project's fault, like they're doing their job.
Yep.
What's your strategy? So sometimes it's, it's pointing the finger back at the leadership or the executive team to say, like, it's not us, it's you. And if you don't want to hear that, sorry. But then it's, political stuff. For me, I'm happy to deal with in a very confrontational way, because to me, it's a matter of ethics. Like, you're reporting the information as you get it and as you see it. And if they're not happy with what they're seeing, then they're not ready.
For sure.
Yeah.
So in that sense, as a PMO, we would, make sure the benefits were forecast at the beginning and signed off by operations. At the end, we would kind of initiate the collection of the realization of the benefits. However, the business should be doing that themselves, right? Because then at least they can't blame us for incorrect data, if you will.
Yeah, and ideally they're like involved throughout the project or the program, and they know how to collect that data, right? So it's not just like dropping it on their lap and they're like, okay, here's your benefits.
Well,
bye.
they should be, but another thing we were talking about, like, piloting the benefits realization capturing of one project, but that project, it was a implementation of like a financial AFE software program. So, and in those benefits, well, there's 10 or 12 different groups that should gain benefits from that, and a lot of them were non-financial benefits. So number one, that's a lot of people to collect information from. Number two, if it's 2 years down the road that the benefits are supposed to start being realized, you're going to go to a VP and say, hey, like, did we realize these benefits? Well, we all know that turnover is, like, I've already had 2 different senior managers since I started, kind of thing, right? So, like, the knowledge of that project and the benefit erodes over time. So how do you deal with that? Because
the changing of the guard is hard, because then you have to ask yourself, like, what's the strategy? Has the strategy changed? If they are willing and able to just keep running with things, then you need to, like, ramp them up, especially if they're sponsors on your program, to say, like, here's all the things we're doing, here's why, here's how we're tracking it. Another helpful thing that I found is setting up quarterly benefits reviews with your key stakeholders. So as you're going through with things, they can start seeing the progression. So you can say, like, say you've captured 60 benefits in your register. And you're like, holy crap, we've realized 15 of them already. Like that
Yeah.
license came up for renewal. We didn't need to renew it. We just saved 20 grand or whatever. But then they'll also start seeing like, where are some of the trends? What are some of the emergent benefits? And then what's to come? And it may not be like tomorrow or by the end of the year, but if you're tracking it and you're keeping it top of mind for them, then it's a really good story to tell. Conversely, I mentioned disbenefits, but I didn't really go into detail too much. But if you're starting to see some trends of disbenefits, which might be like turnover or leadership change or too much strategy change, that's another opportunity to showcase, how that trickle down effect impacts their investments in projects, programs, and portfolios. Because ultimately, if you have constant change, then you can't align your projects to deliver to that strategy. And in addition to that, they might have different concepts of what success looks like, what the metrics are. So it's a pretty empowering thing. I've actually been in that situation myself as well. And kind of said, like, I know you're a client, but I also need you to know that you're changing too much. It's causing fatigue, like change fatigue to your organization. And now all of these projects need to be re-baselined because I don't know what your strategy is. So it helps them realize that, we want to be agile. We want to move people around and do this and do that, but fine, do that, but keep your strategy, like keep your head level and keep things going in the same direction. Because if you don't, you're just gonna be chasing your tail all the time.
Yeah, and like we're seeing that too. Like we made a bunch of changes. So our steering committees, basically one of our steering committees, 90% of the people like moved or changed or whatever. So there's 90% of the steering committee is brand new, and so like 2 of our programs were all the way to gate 2, and now there's new people in there and they're like, well, I want you to reassess this, because you know what I mean? Like they're not gonna just continue going with somebody else's strategy when they don't even understand it. So it just kind of goes back to square one, and it's happened more than once, right?
And that's where you have to like start explaining like the waste conversation, like
agreed. But I mean,
it's tough when you're like talking to like your we might need to have to take this offline, but I know I get it. It's tough when you're like talking to your boss or your boss's boss's boss, and you're like, you need to, and you're like, whoopsie.
For sure.
But I'm happy to continue this conversation.
Cool.
Sure.
It's a really good real life question, John. I like that. We do have a couple minutes. I'd like to get to Kirk's question. Kirk, do you want to take yourself off mute? I think it'd be better if you asked Kindra this one yourself. I like the question.
And I'll put that slide back up too.
Thanks. I think even just the conversation evolved while we were hanging out here, so that it kind of went through some of those questions, but slide 11 as well. It was really just, I thought, a great slide for showing that one-to-many relationship between the different entities and the overlapping nature of effort. And maybe you can, I find especially in a larger matrixed organization, if you have a distributed or diverse team. I'm at home because I've got a kid with sniffles today, negative COVID, but that'll be, I think, the hybrid solution going forward, right? In reality, how do you get teams to be able to find those overlaps that may have happened coincidentally or incidentally, or in a different physical setting? Have you come across any techniques or strategies that allow you to bring people together to quickly find those elements? Are there tricks or maybe even technologies to leverage for that?
I'm actually also going through that right now with another client. Is like, so I mean, ideally, you would be able to say, can you show me your portfolio map? Can you show me like all the projects and programs and portfolios happening within your organization right now, so that I can quickly look at them to see which ones might be overlapping with what I'm doing. If they don't have that, then I just ask the sponsor or a lot of the managers, like, what else do I need to be worried about? Where might this program trip over another project? Like you really have to, I know it's so much easier when you're in the office and you can be like, oh, you're doing this. You see someone at the coffee station. What do you do? I'm working on this project. Wow, that sounds like exactly what I'm doing. Why are we doing the same project? But I find if you just ask enough people enough questions, you'll quickly find out. And it's about being curious more than anything. But asking, the people in your direct lineage, like your sponsors and some of those managers, like, what else is going on? What else? To
And
help.
that benefits register would help a lot as well, right? To have a consistent approach to communication. Of
Totally.
where those overlaps could meet.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many tools that organizations can be using, like whether it's their PPM tool, or even if you have access to like the full organizational, like if they have like a SharePoint list of where, stop sharing, of where all their projects are stored. I've even done that. Like you kind of have to sleuth it out a little bit, where you're like going through all the projects. I'm like, I don't care what that is. I don't care. What is that? That one might have to do with my safety project. I need to reach out to that PM and learn a little bit more. Maybe we should start collaborating or cooperating more. It's an opportunity to be a program and not just a set of independent projects. And it's not organization's fault that they don't see it that way. But I do really feel like it's practitioners' responsibility to show why that's important and to bring those projects together and explain why it's more powerful of a story, to show those relationships as a collective rather than independent, arbitrary units.
Yeah.
I hope that was helpful. I mean,
Integrating it. No, that was a great response. Thanks. Great presentation today.
thank you.
All right, thank you so much. That was a good question, Kirk. I like that one. Now we're just coming up to 1 o'clock, so I just want to be cognizant of everybody's time. If you have to jump off, we certainly understand. I think Kindra said she might be able to stick around for another few minutes. We'll keep her here for a couple
for sure.
seconds. If there is any other questions.
There was a question.
I think we missed, there was one in the chat, I think.
Darren Mondor.
Unfortunately, Darren had to run, but if you want to field his question, I do think it's relevant to what you're talking about for sure, Kindra.
11-week project sponsorship. Any suggestions? Okay, so the question is, to what extent is it possible to mature benefits realization management practices in an environment with often weak project sponsorship? Any suggestions for an environment where outcomes accountability is a challenge? Yes. So my recommendation is you just do it. So you just start tracking it on your own, and you be that guy in your like monthly PMO meetings where you're like, oh, these are all the benefits that I tracked on my program. And people will start asking, well, how did you get that? Where did that come from? And sometimes you have to like explain by doing or show by doing. So when you feel like, you can't get the leadership on board, you can't move the needle, start showing your own stuff. So dream up, what some metrics are that you have control over, that you can capture, that you can calculate. Start logging all your information in a benefits register, and then start showing it to your sponsorship team or your steering committee. Chances are whoever's on your steering committee also sits on like 4 or 5 or 6 other steering committees. And when they see your presentation of, your monthly status report or whatever, and they see that you're tracking all of these benefits and these metrics, then it's going to start that trickle down effect of, well, why don't the other projects do it? To which they might say, like, I don't have time, we didn't have the sponsorship or whatever. But it'll start the conversation around, well, imagine if everyone captured this information. Imagine if everyone had access to all of the cost information. Imagine if we were able to like synchronize all this data into a central location. Call me crazy. Then what could we report on? You know, then how could we make the executives look good? You know, to Sean's point, then how could we tell the story a lot better? So I find a lot of people get sort of dissuaded or just discouraged because there isn't that like gung-ho, you know, from the top push to do benefits realization. So sometimes you need to be the one to get the conversation started.
That's true. And that's a tough one. That's a good question. Tough answer too, Kindra.
Well, I mean, it's none of this is easy, right? Like I said all along, there's no silver bullet. There's no like, you know, here's your quick fix to doing benefits realization. Like it requires a lot of access to data. It requires maturity. It requires standards and governance to do it like fully properly. But you don't have to just sit there and pout if you don't have everything perfectly aligned to get started. You can get started really easily in your own way and make meaningful progress for your organization or your client that will hopefully help them mature and grow as an organization.
Awesome. All right. Well, I would like to once again say thank you to Kindra. She's a huge fan and a great big advocate of PMI-SAC, and she's given so much of her time, and we are very thankful to her. I know she was away last week as well on a personal side of things, so coming back and doing this was taking time out of this was we're very lucky to have her. So once again, thank you, Kindra.
My pleasure. My pleasure. This was fun, and thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. As I said, you know, I'd be more than happy to continue this conversation with any of you if you want to bounce ideas, go for coffee, ask questions. Definitely happy to do that. So thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure, and thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Candida.
We're the lucky ones. All right. Well, I hope everybody has a wonderful and fantastic rest of your day and week. It's a short week, so I'm sure everybody's got lots of work to do. So we'll certainly all get back at it. But thank you again for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you all again very soon. And thanks again, Kindra.
Cheers. Have a good one. Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.